Welcome to She's Got This, the podcast for ambitious women who want to grow and scale their business and use the power of intentional energy direction to design their very best life. I'm your host, Christine Gallagher, award-winning business coach and mindset mentor to female entrepreneurs. If you're ready to own your brilliance while making bank, step into the absolute best version of you and become a force for positive change in the world, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Hey everyone, you're listening to She's Got This. If you are one of our regular listeners, welcome back. And if you're new to the podcast, welcome. And I'm so glad you're here. Today, I wanted to talk about a topic that has been at the forefront of my business, yes, but also my life for the past few months. In fact, if I had to look back at what one of the most important things that I really looked at in 2022, it would definitely be this topic, and that's self-concept. And in this episode, I want to explore specifically how your self-concept actually affects your income directly, and also give you some real concrete tools and ways that you can improve your self-concept and change everything. I thought a good way to start this episode would be with a quote from one of my favorite people, Neville Goddard. He says, "Change your conception of yourself and you will automatically change the world in which you live." So I think a definition is in order. First and foremost, what is this thing we're calling self-concept? It simply means it's your concept of yourself in the world. It's what you think of yourself. And before, people have asked me, is this the same as self-love? And no, it's not. It can be part of it, but self-concept is really more about the lens that you see the world through. So if you think about the statement, I am, that is really powerful because anything you say after I am, you're essentially claiming for yourself. And so this is also about what others think of you as well and what you think of situations in general. Why is this important? Well, because we know what you think of yourself creates your reality. And it's funny because I probably knew this back in like elementary school. And yet here I am today uncovering new layers of this topic and how it has directly affected my life and business. And I wanted to share so much of that with you today. So the deal is this: whatever you think in your mind all day long is what people will reflect back to you. Now, that piece right there alone is something I definitely have not known since I was a kid. This is something that we're not taught in school. This is something that isn't talked about a lot. This isn't something that is at the forefront of things we learned growing up, but it's what I've now realized is the key to everything. And some people will call this transmission of thought, telepathy. What Neville Goddard calls it is EIYPO, which stands for everyone is you pushed out. And whatever you think of it as, it's simply how the subconscious mind works. So what does that mean? What it means is that what you most deeply assume about yourself, other people, and the world becomes your self-concept. They become embedded and shape the reality that you experience. So this is why I'm so passionate about reminding my clients and people in my world that 90% of your income and your level of success in your business comes from the inner stuff. Marketing is super important, I always say, but really it's 10%. You have to have the 90% before you can really get maximum results out of your marketing. So if you want to change something in your world, whether that is a money situation or a relationship issue or anything else, you actually have to change your self-concept first, which then changes your reality. So others can only reflect you. So we all create our own reality and we live there. And so what connects us is, and this is where you can plug in your own term that resonates with you. What connects us is source, or maybe you might call it the God in yourself, being as one, whatever term you want to use. The bottom line is that we are all connected. Therefore, everyone reflects you in your own reality. So we have to start with talking about where the self-concept actually comes from. So what you experienced as a kid, especially when you were ages like 0 to 7, is really where a lot of our self-concept was formed. And the thing is, when we're that age, we don't know to question any of it. So the things that we end up picking up or believing at that young age, they become our adult beliefs. So the things you experience most often is what is going to turn into your dominant assumptions about yourself and the world. And so when you have those dominant assumptions and beliefs, they then become reflected in our reality. And the most annoying thing about them is that they are often false and they are many times negative. So for example, if your lens is nothing good ever happens for me, people just hurt me, I suck, she makes more money than me because she has something special that I'll never have, etc., then you see everything in life through that lens. And then, of course, guess what shows up? Things that then prove those beliefs, even if you see evidence around you that is saying the opposite. So your brain decides what is important, right? So when we say decides what's important, in this case, we're talking about what fits your self-concept. And what it does is it also ignores everything else. And this is because of something called reticular activating system. In other words, what you dominantly believe becomes what people can only reflect back to you. So this is huge. Now, typically there are a few primary fears that end up creating our self-concept. And when you know what they are, the great thing is you can then change them. And by extension, you change your self-concept. And this 100% changes your entire life. So even if you create something or manifest something new that you want, if your self-concept is crappy and it doesn't change, what's going to happen is you will sabotage whatever that thing is that you want. So we actually have to go back and we need to look at some of the history. You want to ask questions like, what was my dad like when I was growing up? What was my mom like? What was my experience in school like? What was my experience with my siblings or my family like? What was I like as a child? What was I like as an adolescent? What bad things happened and, how did I deal with them? And from this place, you can start uncovering what your fears really are about. Now, there are 4 fears that are the most common. And as I talk about these, I just want you to think about which is most dominant for you. So yes, there's tons of fears, but again, these are the 4 that are most commonly seen. Number 1, I won't get your love. So typically, if this is your fear, your top fear, it means your emotional needs weren't met when you were little. That's number 1. Number 2, you won't stay. So typically this becomes your big fear if you were abandoned physically, or maybe if someone close to you died when you were young. Number 3, I won't be chosen. And this usually comes from experiences that create shame for us, where we believe we're not being enough, being different than others. And number 4, you will hurt me. Typically, you grew up with instability, abuse, or a lack of trust. So those are typically the most common among all of us humans. And so you want to think about which is the big one for you. Personally, for me, when I did a lot of work on this originally, it became obvious that the first 2 were the biggest for me, with the first one being the most dominant. So now that we know that these are some of the biggest fears that most of us have, questions you can ask yourself would be things like, what did I experience that caused this fear? And so you can relate it back to one of those primary common fears. And you also want to ask, like, how is this affecting me negatively? How is this affecting my life? How is it affecting my relationships? And also, how does it show up? And how does it affect what I think today? And one of the best things that you can do is affirm against your fear with affirmations around your self-concept. So some examples of this might be, I'm too important to lose. I get my needs met always. I am loved and wanted. I am loved just the way I am. I trust those that I love also love me. I am in control. I can always trust the people I love. I am irreplaceable, and everything is always working out in my favor, which is one of my favorites. Now, if you listened to the episode a few weeks ago where I talked about journaling exercises for more clients, there were 2 exercises that are also really good for this work, and they are the revision exercise I talked about and the forgiveness exercise. So you can go back and check them out if you missed that. The other thing that you really want to look at is what is triggering you. Really investigating what your triggers are, which means the things that you see or touch or smell or hear that cause you to have an emotional reaction. And they come from negative subconscious memories or trauma. And if you don't deal with them, then you'll continue to react badly. And the way that we humans typically cope with these triggers is through things like responses of freeze or fight or flight, which I'm sure you've probably heard of. And this is also why I have a big issue with law of attraction teachings, because they don't talk necessarily about this piece, or they don't delve into it in the depth that I think it deserves, because it's a lot harder to create what it is that you want if you are coming from a place where you're being triggered all the time, you're being run by your dominant fears, and your self-concept is not good. So in terms of triggers, questions you can ask yourself: what trigger did I react to? How did I react? What did I think? What did I feel? And how can I give this a better meaning? And what is that new meaning? So if we were to relate this to your income and your business, it's things like, when that person didn't hire me, I thought this. I was triggered by this when I launched that program. I think this about myself because of this. What is it that's really keeping me stuck at this income plateau for years? Those are just some examples. Now, let's say you can actually have, do, and be whatever you want, which I believe you can. If that was true, what would your new self-concept actually be? In the areas of money, in career, lifestyle, love, friends. You could even look at, how would my ideal partner look, and how would my ideal relationship look? In other words, what is the new story of you? And all of this is great, but of course, it really becomes super powerful when we actually make this stuff stick. So how do you do that? Well, one of my favorite words these days is persist. And one of the ways that you can really make sure that this is changing your mind and changing your life and reactions and triggers is to persist in the new story that you're creating. You can also use affirmations, as we mentioned. So using those new affirmations, I'm big with affirmations in my morning routine, because we have to remember that when you repeat something over and over, you start to actually change your beliefs and change your mind. Another thing you can do that I love, visualization. And you can have visualizations from your new story. One of the things that I do on a daily basis pretty much is I'll listen to something that's like a short meditation. Maybe it's 10 minutes, and I will use that to get me into a space of calm, relaxation, and take a few minutes to visualize a scene or two that would imply that I already have what it is that I want. So for example, you might picture yourself at your desk, in your office, in your house, at your computer, and you're pulling up some numbers for your business. And as you update the numbers, you see that you've now reached X amount by this point in the year. So you might be thinking, okay, I would love to make $1 million a year. So your scene could be seeing those numbers. Maybe it's on a document, maybe it's on a spreadsheet, maybe it's something from your bookkeeper or your CPA, and realizing that you just crossed the $1 million mark for the year. And then you getting up, doing a happy dance, and going downstairs and telling somebody that you love that you just hit this milestone, and them congratulating you and being excited for you. That's just one example of a scene that you can loop in your mind and use to create this new concept of who you are, meaning you are the person who makes $1 million a year. Also, you want to watch your triggers, as we talked about. Like, pay attention to what is actually triggering you. in the moment, this is something that we don't usually give a lot of thought to. We just go about our day and we get triggered by things and we get annoyed and then we just keep on going. And so I would really encourage you to take a moment, take a breath. And when you get triggered, ask yourself, what is this really about? What is this showing me? What is actually going on here? What fear does this connect back to that is still running my life? You want to keep shifting back to your new state with that new story, with your new visualizations, with your affirmations, with persisting, with looking at your triggers. Keep shifting back to your new state. It's actually your state that manifests. Now, techniques like some of the ones that we just talked about can help you shift your state. That's why they're important. But just know it's not the technique that necessarily manifests. It is the state you put yourself in that manifests. So I hope these were good reminders for you. I'm always reminding myself of these things and how important self-concept is to how you see yourself in your life and business, which of course affects everything from your income to your level of success to your level of happiness and so much more. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or share it with someone else who would find it helpful. To stay connected with me, please visit she'sgotclients.com and sign up for my email list at the bottom of the page. Or feel free to share this episode on your Instagram and tag me at Christine G and I'll repost you. I would love to share this with as many people as possible. I love you. Until next time, keep shining your light.